So great to see you all. And welcome back. Great to see so many of you back again. So like I said, we're going to have a continuation of what we're doing on this Taste of Freedom course. Last week, you'll remember, I was introducing this whole idea of the Dakini, the sky dancer. And I was talking about how a lot of the time we live in this kind of repetitive circular way of going about our lives. We kind of behave in similar ways. We're provoked in similar ways. There's an energy to the way in which we conduct ourselves. We kind of move away from the things we don't like and we move towards the things we do like. So there's kind of a movement towards in a way, and that in itself kind of creates what's known as a round. We kind of keep going round and around. And there's an energy associated with kind of moving away from the things that we don't like, the things that we have aversion to, and then moving towards the things that we do, the things that we crave, the things, the people, the situations, the holidays, God knows what, are all the things that we crave. So there's a repetitive circular kind of oscillating movement associated with this round, so to speak. And you might recall last week, I also said that the reason we do that is we're trying to get security. We're trying to kind of rearrange our lives so that we have exactly the things we want and the people we like around us. Underlying that is sort of a deep sense of security, which on one level is a fallacy because we know it doesn't ultimately fulfill us. Even when things are going well, we're still trying to control things to make sure that they stay the same. But they know, notwithstanding all this controlling that we try to do of our lives to rearrange and only have the things and the people we like and have the things that we don't and the people that we don't not in our lives. Underneath that is a sense of that this is not very fulfilling, and on that sort of deeper level, we're not really being nourished or fulfilled. And I suggested to you that that's the start of what's known as the spiral. Claire, could you put up that image of the spiral there, just to give an example? This is an image I got from the internet. This spiral, in a sense, is the start of the moving away from this repetitive, habitual going around and around, acting in the same sort of way. It's the start of when we start asking those deeper questions. Is this it really? Is this what my life is all about? Are there any other ways I could be more fulfilled in my life? So it usually starts this stepping off the round and stepping up onto this kind of spiral with the start of those deeper questions, a sense of dissatisfaction, or in Buddhist terms, it's known as dukkha. You might remember from the very first week, a few weeks ago now, I said that there were a number of steps on this spiral. And if you could see it as a sequence of steps leading to enlightenment in itself is a way you could see it. Each successive step arises in dependence upon the previous one. So the first step, which would be at the bottom, arises in dependence upon dukkha, or suffering. Now, suffering can be quite a strong word. It doesn't mean physical pain, although it can include that. It's kind of a dissatisfaction. Perhaps the reason you signed up to do this course, which may or may not be even becoming clearer as the weeks go on. So it starts with a dissatisfaction, is a word I prefer necessarily than suffering. And the next successive step is faith, or Shraddha it's called. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Pranyamai will talk about that. It's a sense of confidence it's a sense of inspiration that maybe you've come across something that might be an answer to those deeper questions around inner fulfillment, a sense of confidence in yourself that you can follow a path, and maybe a sense of confidence that this might be the path for you. And as you progress up the spiral, there are successive stages such as satisfaction and delight, rapture, tranquility, bliss, concentration. The seventh stage is known as knowledge and vision of things as they really are, which is in essence this word that you're probably familiar with called insight. And I'm going to suggest to you that there is no freedom without a degree of insight. And that's what this course is about, moving up this spiral path, acquiring insight into the way things are, and continuing on past that to what's known as disentanglement, dispassion. And the last couple of stages are known as knowledge of the destruction of the biases, which is equivalent to enlightenment. And they are breaking through the fetters, essentially, of craving wrong views and ignorance, And the last 3 weeks of this course, we'll be spending a night on each of these last three fetters, which are, if you're looking at that spiral, listening to me, they're towards the top of the spiral, breaking through these fetters which hold us back, entrap us, if you like, don't allow us to be free, and they are craving wrong views and ignorance. So that, in essence, is the sort of trajectory of the course. But last week I did talk about the Dakini, and how the Dakini is, if you like, this sky dweller or sky dancer. The Dakini energy shows us what we need to do, if you like, with challenges in our lives. Or maybe another way to put it is what we need to do to step off this cyclical, repetitive way of being and step onto this spiral. And I know it was Florenzo on my mind, if I remember right, who asked, how do we sort of follow this path? And really the next couple of weeks we'll be talking about breaking through these three fetters and moving in the spiral direction towards enlightenment. But I do want you just to kind of, you can take that image down now, Claire. I just want you to kind of have that image of the spiral in the back of your mind, that there is, if you like, a path or a trajectory even with which we can follow. And each stage, as I say, arises in dependence upon the successive one. So there is actually, a path you can follow to enlightenment. Okay, I don't want to say too much at this point, because Pranayama is going to be talking more about the spiral in the second half. But I would like us to meditate now. So if you want to set yourselves up for meditation, as usual, I'm going to ring 3 bells at the beginning and 3 at the end. But I'm going to lead us in such a way as to give you some sort of glimpse or experience of what it might be like to move, at least in the meditative sense, up this spiral. That there's kind of a progression in contentment and concentration in your meditation. As much as I say, to give you a meditative glimpse of what the spiral might feel like in your experience, but also hopefully to kind of inspire you and develop more of that shraddha or confidence in establishing meditation practice for yourself. So, with that in mind, if you'd like to make any last minute preparations there, just close your eyes. I'll just wait until you're all settled there now. So I just want you to focus on the bell, the sound it makes. How it becomes softer and more quiet. Tuning into it fading away. And with it, maybe a fading away of our own busyness from today, or preoccupations or responsibilities. Just letting them all fade away as you sit here quietly listening to me. I invite you now to start paying attention to your breathing. The out breath, following it right to the end when it changes and becomes an in-breath. Following that as your body expands with air, it too turns and becomes an out-breath once again. Just following that pattern of breathing in and breathing out. Noticing whether the breaths are long or short. Not trying to control them, just noticing how they are. Trying to keep your attention with an entire out breath and then an entire in breath. See if you can follow it from beginning to end. And if your mind wanders off, where does it wander off? The middle of the breath? The end of the breath? Mindfulness is that quality that brings you back when you've noticed you've wandered off. So I'd like you to broaden that mindfulness and start to become aware of your whole body. You're still aware of the in and out breath, but it's more in the periphery of your experience, almost standing behind you, if you like. But the main focus is on your body. It might be on the movement of the body as the breath comes in and out. It might be the temperature of the body. Might even be any tension you notice in the body as you breathe. So just trying to feel your body breathing. The noticing of the in and out breath becomes quieter. In the background almost. The main attention is on the body. And if there is any tension in the body, see if by bringing awareness to it, it releases out any tension. Might be between the eyes, maybe the throat. You can even open your mouth a little bit if there's any clenched jaw tension. Any holding in your shoulders, back. Just bring your awareness to that. And if your mind wanders off, that's okay. Maybe just come back to an awareness of the breath coming in and out. See if that focuses you again. Then let the focus of the in and out breath recede into the background again and come back to an awareness of the body. Noticing any calmness developing in the body now. Ease, relaxation. Noticing any pleasure in your experience. Might be a sense of warmth, sense of relaxation. Sense of brightness in the mind that is now aware. Could be very subtle, probably is very subtle. Could just be the joy of sitting here with no responsibilities. A contented mind. Try and stay with that contentment, see what happens. If there's any thoughts arising, try not to get caught up with them. Just let them pass across your experience like clouds across the sky. We're just trying to notice what kind of mind we're meditating with. Is it still busy and chatty? Or is it calmer, contented, quiet? Trying to notice the mind that is noticing what the mind is doing. Noticing the observing mind. This observing mind is still aware of the breath, still aware of the body, still aware of any thoughts or busyness in the mind. It's aware of it all. Is this noticing mind becoming calm? Just noticing that experiencing mind and experiencing that noticing mind. If your mind had a mood now, what mood would your mind be in? Letting thoughts go as the mind notices them arising, almost blowing them away like you'd blow out a candle. Move on, thoughts. Starting to notice now that our experience is always changing, almost every couple of seconds. The impermanence of experience. It's like a river flowing. It never stops. Seeing that our moment by moment experience never stays the same. Seeing that deeply, that's insight. Insight into impermanence. It's in that space of insight that we can step onto the spiral path. step away from our habitual tendencies. So I'd like you to let go of any effort you're making now. Step back, as it were. You can still notice any thoughts passing away and blowing them away, even. Coming back to the simple joy of noticing the breath coming in and out. How your body probably moves more softly as you breathe in and out than it did in the beginning. And broadening your awareness again to take into account all the people on screen with you. All sharing this journey, stepping onto the spiral path together. So from this hopefully joyful meditative state, I'd like you to go into your breakout groups. There were two things in particular we'd asked you to have a look at during the course of the week. The first one was trying to bring all of your energy to be aware of the breath when you're meditating. Just to discuss that. And do you bring all of your energy, all of your attention to the breath, or does your mind wander off? And the second question was, does your mind wander off when you're not meditating? Do you bring all of yourself to all of your other activities? Or is only part of you there? So in other words, do you wander off in your meditation, or where do you go? And do you wander off when you're not meditating, and where do you go? Claire, could I kindly get you to break us up and bring us back at 7:45?
7:45, so that's 7 minutes.
Is that right? Where are we at? No, sorry, make it 10:45. I'm looking at the timer. Make it 10:45, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Claire.
So let's just start with lifting our shoulders and bringing them back and releasing them. So we lift the shoulders up to the ears and back. And just for a moment, tune in to the breathing body. Noticing any tightness or tension in the body. Bringing the breath to those areas and releasing. Thoughts in your head. Curiosity, not dwelling on anything. The feeling tone, is it pleasant, painful, not feeling much at all, neutral. Notice the changing nature of experience. Is there anything fixed in your experience? Sounds around you. The breathing body. Thoughts in your head. Your emotional state. Discomfort or pain in the body. Do you notice a flow of sensation? Feeling your feet planted on the earth, and through the floor of where you are. The grounding of the body into the earth. Opening, aware. of movement. Flow of energy, thought, emotion. Pay attention. Notice. Keep looking. Look carefully. There is no end to seeing. Stay curious. And then letting go. And when you're ready, there's no rush. Opening your eyes. And coming back to our connection with each other in this virtual class. So just as the great ocean has one taste, the taste of salt, the Dharma Vinaya, the principle and the practice, the Buddha's teaching has one taste, the taste of freedom. So there are two images, one of a circle, the wheel. You may have seen this. It's the wheel of samsara, going round and round. And the other is of the spiral, which Yamini put up an image at the beginning of the class, of moving upwards. So in the circle, we go around birth, sickness, old age, death, everything in between, craving for things that are pleasurable and avoiding things that we feel will hurt us, moving from one to the other. And at some point, there's a point of that ill-fitting chariot wheel that the Buddha talks about, dukkha. Unsatisfactory, can be a point of real suffering, something that's happening in our lives. But it can just be that feeling, I'm not happy, I'm dissatisfied, I don't want to do this anymore. The job, the same friends, disturbing relationships with family, or bad health, whatever it is. And we start looking in another way. And the point is the whole dukkha leads us maybe to take a look at another way. I might do a meditation, take a meditation class. I might take yoga. And we start, maybe even without knowing that, we have this dissatisfaction, unsatisfactoriness. It can be real suffering, real pain. Something's happened major in our life. And we go on a quest for something else. And we might, go off to the pub, go drinking a lot. We might spend our time on computers, watching all sorts of things. And then we take maybe positive exercise, Tai Chi, other yoga, something that makes us feel better physically. And maybe then we manage to take a meditation class and we become aware of what's going on when we sit and we do the practices of the mindfulness of breathing, which is about harnessing the energy so that we can focus on a particular way. And the metta bhavana, which opens the heart into friendliness, kindness, and love. And it gives us a glimpse of another way of being. And we take more courses, meet some friends that are doing the same thing. We go on retreat. And it opens a door, a gateway into the spiral path. So in the spiral path, it starts with Shraddha, which is it can be interpreted as faith. But faith can have all sorts of connotations for us. So what it is in Buddhism is confidence, trust in what you are doing is opening a way to reach your potential as a human being. And that's what the spiral path is about. Moving up the spiral or moving deeper into our experience and opening the door to the spiral. We move from Shraddha, getting a glimpse of joy, rapture, and so on, until we get to a point where through the practices and the path, we are at a point of where we see into the true nature of reality. And enlightenment occurs. That's what happened with the Buddha. But where we are at is coming off that wheel, that dukkha moment, and looking at the mind. So that's the start of all of this. In the Dhammapada, which is the words of the Buddha, which is a very deep Dharma teaching, practice of Dharma teachings, the one that really connects with me is experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, produced by mind. If one speaks or acts with an impure mind, suffering follows like the cartwheel follows the wheel of the ox. Experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, produced by mind. If one speaks or acts with a pure mind, happiness follows like a shadow that never departs. And it's a beautiful way of expressing all of this. So in the context of the taste of freedom and the spiral path, the wheel is associated with reactivity, our habitual way of doing things. And the spiral is opening up to our potential, growing and develop, and it's creative. So we start to move creatively on the path. But once we become aware of the mind, thoughts, emotions, our habits, and what ways we operate, how greed, hatred, and delusion manifests in our life, it can be overwhelming at first. But it also can open into like joy, get a glimpse of joy, because we now have a way to work with our mind. So, for example, in our ordinary life, we have relationships with people, partners, friends, family. We have work, we go to work. We have to get on and be outside in the world and connect with other human beings and all beings, really, animals as well. So we can notice how we are. And how we notice is through what happens, for example, in our day-to-day life. You get up in the morning, brush your teeth. Is that on automatic pilot? You have your breakfast. Maybe you notice, it's a nice day. Feeling good. Have something good on later. And you go out the door. The birds are singing. And then you walk over to cross the road. And you have to stop for the pedestrian crossing. And this happened to me today, so I'll share it. I thought initially I was feeling this is good. And then why doesn't this light change? I'm late. I need to meet a friend. So it changes my relationship to the relaxed way of being, connected to nature, to what's going on, to a bit of anxiety. So I can have an awareness of catching that. I'm a bit irritated about that. Just let it alone, pranayama, and then move on. That's a tiny thing. But in our lives, we can. So going to the dart, you look at the dart, it's full. Where do I stand in here? And by the time we get to work, the mood that started very open and expansive has changed a little bit. And you get into work, and there's lots on your plate. And before you know it, you're in the full thrust of doing and into either connection with what you're doing, warm-heartedness, or rumination in the head about when am I getting out of here, I can't stand this job. So all of that kind of cycle can continue in many different ways. Later on, it can be a disturbing conversation that starts off with quite normal conversation with family member, and before you know it, something is said, what's that about? And then you're feeling a bit resentful and angry, and by the time you go to bed, you have a lot in your head. and it's hard to let it go. So in all of that and other stuff, we all do these kind of things. So they go from a pattern of anger, getting angry, starting with little irritation, resentment, then something happens a bit angry, and it becomes a pattern of continuous moving into that kind of cycle. Or it can be, looking at internet shopping. What I'm going to buy, I'm going to buy this and that and the other, and kind of getting into greed, where it's trying to find satisfaction in the greed. So it's like moving to that pleasure or avoiding that pain that anger causes. And this cycle of existence can keep us on that wheel I was talking about. So as we become aware through looking to reach our potential and growing and developing, like we are all doing now through coming to this class, we start looking at another way of operating. We become aware through our meditation practice, through our ethics, like what we do off the cushion, how kind and generous we are. And if we don't see that, we also don't beat ourselves up about it. So the path is full of what human beings do in connection or disconnection from each other. But when we have the Buddha as the example and the teachings, it opens up this potential, this path through the spiral path as a way of absolutely being free of all of that. And it's quite exciting. We may, through off the cushion, when we're looking to be a bit more generous, kinder, truthful, small things of, being honest about what's going on for us. We notice that feeling of contentment, and it opens up a potential for joy. We get a glimpse, this stuff works. I've found a way to work with my mind that's actually making me happy and well. It doesn't mean it's all the time, but I know if I do the practices, I'm happy, contented, and I feel well. That's my experience. So that's what we're doing. We're looking to be creative and not reactive. So reactive is just automatic. Something happens, somebody says the wrong thing, we find ourselves pulling away from this person, can be a friend or work colleague or family, and we notice the tightness in the body. And then we have a choice. We can keep it going because we all have things happen in our lives. The practice is the seeing and not doing the same thing again. So that's why I find the path so exciting. If I'm having a conversation with my sister and we get into a particular way of talking that brings me back to maybe childhood, I see that. So rather than moving into the same way of operating, I feel I can pull back and listen more. And that's through following the path of the Buddha. So we have a choice of being creative in everything we do. Each moment of the day, we have that choice. And when we find ourselves into reactive and automatic, when we notice, that's when the choice comes. Because it's very difficult to just change what we do. That's why there's a path. So the path, the first stage of the path is to open into Shraddha, which is confidence or trust that this path works. Like the Buddha said, don't take my word for it, test it out in your experience. If I meditate, if I do my best to be skillful, notice when I'm unskillful, change my habits, I start to feel happy, contented, and well. It's not easy. That's why we have the Sangha, the fellowship of those who tread the way, connecting with like-minded people who are also interested in growing and developing and reaching their potential. So it's a very exciting path. It requires commitment and it requires confidence that this works. And the only way we get that is if we see it in our own experience. So, yeah. There's another image I like, which is of the creativity and reactivity, the wheel going around, of the lotus, you know, the lotus flower, or any flower. It could be a rose or your favorite flower. Unfolding, opening, leaves opening. In the beginning, it's tight, little bit open, and then it starts open, until eventually we're an awakened human being. How magnificent is that? So, pushing away and moving towards grasping doesn't make us feel happy and well. Or does it in your experience? What have you seen about any of this that makes you keep coming, taking courses? Have you had a glimpse of the creative path? And we continue to tread the wheel. We don't become an awakened human being instantly. It's a path of regular steps. The Buddha left all sorts of lists of paths, of ways, but they're all about the same thing. They're all about the taste of freedom. At one point on the spiral path, there is the path that when we see things as they really are, where there's insight, and move into the awakened state. So that's our potential. But at the moment, our potential also is in the now of where we're at, seeing when we're open, connected, warm-hearted, wholehearted, and seeing when we're tight, closed, pulling back, disconnected. And in the doing, in the seeing is the doing. So that words around look carefully, notice, pay attention, keep looking. There is no end to seeing, is the path. So I just leave that there just for a moment, and I'm going to go to it's an extract from a reading from what the Buddha said about what enlightenment might feel like, basically. And he used a few similes to, I suppose, connect through image, because we do connect through image, and also very good. The path is about feeling into it, feeling connected, feeling warm-hearted. It's not disassociated from our body. Our body is the vehicle that, if we do all the practices, we can, just like the Buddha, become awakened human being. So he said here, so when one sets out to live a spiritual life, one is, or one should be, making a conscious effort to break away, to get free, to get clear of all sorts of entanglements, involvements, and complicated murkiness. To make a transition from lower to higher states of being and consciousness, trying to develop, to evolve. This is what the spiritual life is substantially about. This is what we're all trying to do, being here. In our present state and circumstances, we feel it only too often as though we are imprisoned, even caged on a treadmill. Naturally, we have the urge to get out, to break out if necessary, to get free and clear. In the Pali Canon, there's a passage where the Buddha talks about what it feels like to be enlightenment. He said, suppose that on a hot and dusty day, you'd been carrying an enormous burden for many miles, and suppose that after you've been staggering along with it mile after mile, hour after hour, you're at last able to lift that load off your shoulders and put it down, free from the tremendous oppressive weight. Becoming enlightened, he said, is like that. You feel as though you have to set down all your burdens. There's no weight for you to carry, nothing oppressing you. You're light and buoyant, you can float free. And again, he said, suppose you've been engaged in some trades, and suppose as a result of your business enterprise or lack of enterprise, you got heavily into debt. You owe a lot of money to a lot of people, and you have no idea how you're going to pay them back. Your creditors are knocking on the door, following you about, wanting their money. Before you is the prospect of going to prison. Then one day, by some miracle, you suddenly acquire a large sum of money and gets rid of all your debts. You can look everybody in the face again, free from terrible anxiety. Becoming enlightened, the Buddha said, is a bit like that. So in these similes, there's another one where he talks about it rolling this boulder up a hill and you're just exhausted. And all of a sudden you can let it go and you just feel a great release. So the freedom is the letting go, the surrendering, the opening. But they're glimpses that we might have in different ways, that different things we do when we feel that exhilaration of just being free of burden, free of a way of being. But for an enlightened being, it's continuous, it's transcendental, it's entered into another way. It just doesn't happen for a minute and it's gone. I want some of that. That's why I'm following the path. So let me see. Oh, So let me just open it up to see, is anybody any comments or anything to share from any of that?